chefs, and today I'm speaking to Allan Campion, who has a lifelong passion for the food industry in Melbourne and, of course, Australia. Allan first appeared on the Melbourne food scene back in 1979. Seems like an era ago, but you knew right from that get-go that it was part of your life, and it's been a major part of your life over the last, dare I say it, 40 years, Allan.
Oh, I know. It does seem like 40 in some senses, but amazing as well. I guess I've done, no matter what I've done, food is at the very core of everything I do. Always coming back to food, but I've gone off and done other things around that. So it's been pretty incredible.
Well, I mean, obviously the Melbourne food scene has evolved over even the last, dare we say it, last couple of months, but certainly over the last couple of years. The late 70s were a time of great change where the immigration that we saw through the 40s and the 50s and into the 60s were having a profound effect upon the food scene in Melbourne. And it's made our restaurant scene what it is today, a multinational convergence of ideas and principles and everything from hawker food right through to fine French dining. I want to talk about the early days, the Melbourne restaurant scene. I mean, through that late 70s, 80s and into the 90s, there were Two Faces, Glow, Stephanie Alexander was making a real impact. A lot of the leading food and chefs of today were born in that era or came of age in that area. So where was your first restaurant?
Look, my food background is quite different to a lot of Melbourne chefs, I guess you could say. I started, actually, my background is Irish, but I grew up in Melbourne. And when I was 16, my family went back to Ireland for a year. And I didn't want to go back to school because I knew I'd found this one thing I was focused on, which was food and cooking. So I got an opportunity to start my apprenticeship there. And then we came back to Melbourne a year later. And ultimately I ended up in the Royal Australian Navy for 6 years, which was the minimum kind of term at that point. So just fantastic training, incredible travel through Southeast Asia, New Zealand, the Pacific, around the country many times. And because people who are in the Navy are very used to going to Singapore and Hong Kong and Tokyo and Indonesia. And this was in the early to mid 80s, and chili crab and beef and black bear, all completely normal. They've been eating it for decades, in fact. So great learning
certainly
experience.
Outshone the meat and sausages and the mashed potato.
Yeah, very much. It was quite an amazing, what food they were eating on those ships was vastly different to what we were eating in our homes in Australia, generally speaking. But that's all changed nowadays, of course, and cuisines are phenomenal across the country, that's for sure.
So we move forward to today. You're extremely well known for your Melbourne food experiences and for both locals and visitors alike to our beautiful city. If I was to book a tour today, all things considered, where would you take me?
I would love to start, I think, with the Queen Victoria Market. It's relatively rare in Australia to have a market that's right in the heart of town, Adelaide being the other wonderful exception. Melbourne's market has a phenomenal multicultural mix. Families that have been there for, I'm not kidding, 80 years. Unbelievable. There's Tomato City where John works, which have just celebrated 78 years or something like that, and incredible. So the multicultural mix, I'll take you through Queen Victoria Market. We'd have Turkish pastries hot from the oven, those beautiful pide style. We get some oysters open fresh to order. We could taste the most phenomenal cheeses from around the country and certainly around regional Victoria. Beautiful coffee from say Market Lane, who are wonderful operators.
Just across the road, yes.
Yeah, that's it. And then we might pop into Books for Cooks because we do want to see what's the latest releases that those guys have on their shelves, particularly from Melbourne chefs and stuff.
exactly. And what a clever move to move from Fitzroy, which was its base for well over a decade.
Yeah, absolutely. So
And it just sort of
that's where
seemed
it
fitting.
began.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. And I suppose you have access to some of those lesser well-known cafes and coffee shops and little food experiences. If you're here on your day off, you remember those days off,
Yes, yes.
where would you take yourself for lunch? What would you have?
Ooh, great question. If I had sort of a choice of going anywhere for lunch, do you know where I quite like? And I was actually writing about it on the weekend for our website. Is in fact Arbory, or Arbory Bar as it's known, right on the river there, because they have two menus. So one is, the burgers and the fries and all of that, fun food that delights a lot of people, and it's great. But they often have a menu of some other brilliant food at very good prices, beautifully presented. And this is a venue for those that don't know it. They took over an old station platform of Flinders Street Station.
Mhm.
So they're right along the Yarra River. It's over 150 meters long, and it's basically an outdoor bar with heaters and umbrellas and some shade areas and some beautiful trees. So great drinks, terrific food, beautiful views. And it's actually a place I recommend for breakfast, or at least coffee in the
Oh
morning.
yeah,
All
yeah.
the
I mean, you
rowers
can
are out there
figure
on the river.
yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. And it really epitomises the Melbourne food scene.
yeah,
It's interesting
correct.
that you picked that particular one. Back in the 80s, I was a young chef at the Treble Clef, which is the concert hall. So you're
Yes,
looking backwards, and
yes,
for me, the 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 nurturing essence of the Melbourne food scene was captured in moments there. There was beautiful flaky pastries arriving for the morning service.
yes.
Coffee was always on the go. There was always classical music playing in the background. You just never know who's going to come through, whether it was a star performing at the gallery or at the concert hall. But looking across the river to the skyline of that 80s Melbourne
Yes.
city, it's grown exponentially from there. And that development from that side down towards the left, South Bank and so forth, been remarkable. And this has
It really
changed in the
has.
last 20 years.
And I think, in fact, the river setting, and I think Arbory has proven you can be on the river and do something really exceptional. And if anyone gets to Arbory and you're there over the summer, they have what's known as Arbory Afloat. So huge pontoons. The theme changes every single year that they're doing it. I believe this year is the outdoor Aussie beach theme. So that they prove that the river of the Yarra River side of Melbourne is really kind of underutilized,
Mm.
underdeveloped, particularly on that northern side of the river there. So I think that's where there's some money being spent in developing over the next, 5-10 years. So yeah, it's a pretty amazing city. But some other great place for just eating and popping in for lunch. I think Pure South is a great operation there on the opposite
Yeah,
side
yeah,
of the Yarra River.
across the river.
Yeah, it's really, really wonderful. We have farmers' daughters opening around about this time in Melbourne, certainly by Christmas, with Alejandro Severa from Pastuzo. So he'll be bringing all these beautiful food from Gippsland, straight from his producers and
Perfect.
growers. So that's going to be fantastic with these beautiful Peruvian cooking over the grill, etc.
Mm.
That real classic place. Like go for pizza at SPQR, or pop into Annam for Chef Jerry Mai and her beautiful modern Vietnamese food up the top of
Mm.
Chinatown there.
Yeah.
Spoiled for choice doesn't even begin to
No,
sum
no,
up
no, no, that's right.
this city for food.
Lucky us, lucky us.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
we are firmly established as a major food destination globally,
Yes.
and I think there's an innovative approach to what we do, and I'm seeing a lot more chefs who are thinking about the sustainability. So whether it's getting produce from Gippsland or locally grown
Yes.
ingredients, incredible. One thing that I've noticed that you're beginning to develop and is your mentorship, Alan. And I see mentorship as a way of passing our knowledge and our experiences to those people that are seeking that sort of information. So what was the idea behind placing yourself as a mentor?
Yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, apart from the wealth of knowledge and experience that you possess.
I think it's seeing people who are apprentices and trainees, or alongside me, even say 25 years ago, are leaders. Like, I won't name names, but amazing people who I see around Melbourne as I go exploring, and we talk online and we catch up for food and all
with
of
a little
that.
less hair.
Yeah, totally. Not the girls. And they've gone on to amazing things. So that's really how it sort of snowballed from there. So it's a great opportunity to spend just say 2 hours a month with someone and just be a sounding board that they can talk about, really privately, what they're thinking, what they'd love to do, what they're dreaming of, and to offer some guidance on an ongoing basis is a real honor. To be honest, that's exactly what it is. So obviously many people in hospitality, but I mentor people who are certainly not in hospitality at all. So I'm very lucky to be able to connect with people in that way, and I learn as much as they take away as well. That's absolutely true. So we put in a lot of effort and a lot of talk. They have to be read. They have to dig pretty deep into where they are and what they'd love to be and what they enjoy and what they don't like. And say you bring that back to hospitality, it's a challenging career, that is for sure, which can bring incredible pleasure and joy into your work,
and the deepest, darkest despair at times as well. Hence the reputation that a lot of chefs seem to enjoy.
For sure. So and often it's well, how do we work our way through those? Well, that is going to come up from time to time. There are phenomenal supports nowadays that chefs themselves have created, and programs and assistants and so on. So yeah, it's hard, but I could never have imagined doing anything else than what I've done, and I don't plan on doing anything different for the rest of my working life, and that should be many, many years. So yeah, I guess
you can only get better, like fine wine, Alan.
Oh well, hopefully. I guess that and the thing that for me was working as a chef and then working as a food writer. It was all about building connections. So in writing about restaurants and food stores and markets and so on, I learned about Melbourne and got to know the people who were kicking the city into the sort of place that it is. So say knowing and meeting Andrew McConnell when he had just the one restaurant with his brother Matt. Well, they've both gone on to do phenomenal things, and seeing those sorts of businesses begin and grow.
Those guys, that they've hosted Adrian Richardson.
Yes.
Yeah, his name he spent some time with them. Just the amount of chefs that have come through have been influenced by the brothers themselves.
Yeah, phenomenal. I think what also is quite phenomenal around Melbourne, we have our restaurants, we've got our cafes, we've got our multi-ethnic places as well around the suburbs as well as around the heart of Melbourne. It's a real living, thriving city for food. It's a destination. It's where people live and work and visit. But also our cocktail bars. Some of the operators have brought us Eau de Vie and Boilermaker House. Mjolnir might be new to some people, but it's a Viking themed, beautiful cocktail bar in the heart of Melbourne. They have one in Sydney also, and it's a great night out. It's so good, and the food's amazing. But that team have also just launched recently Nick and Nora's here in Melbourne, and that's a classy, beautiful operation. And Nick and Nora's is based around a fictional detective couple, and it's if you've gone to their apartment in the 1940s.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely love that. Yeah.
So put Nick and Nora's on your list, folks. But the food and the hospitality and the service of that level of cocktail bar in Melbourne is outstanding as well. So yes, you go for breakfast, you can go for a drink somewhere, you can go for the big night out, and you're going to be so well looked after.
Overwhelmed with the experience of it, and that quirkiness, that whimsy that operators like these are bringing
Yes.
to the Melbourne food scene
Mm.
is incredible, and it sort of means, hey, we can have some fun because someone's put a lot of thought into what they've done and created.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, when we take groups around around Melbourne, we tend to, at the moment, we're doing quite small groups, twos and fours
Mm,
primarily, with keeping COVID safe and all of those things. But people get incredible interaction because of our links with owners and operators and
yeah.
chefs and so on. People get this experience of meeting those people, the person that's about to cook their food or that is cooking their food in front of them, if we're sitting at the restaurant bench. Same in bars as well. They get the story, they get looked after, they get the
Mm,
background on the cocktail, and where the gin is from. That Adelaide Hills supplied the herbs that went into the Channicles, that went into everything, and so
hmm
on. And it's quite a wonderful experience. And that information turns a drink or a plate of food into a bigger
Into,
experience, and you
yeah,
remember
exactly.
it. I find your memory of those dishes is deeper because you
Mm.
understand, or you've had a bit of information
There's
passed
a
on to you.
true connection to what it is
Correct.
that we're eating or drinking, and
Yes. Yeah, for
so
sure.
even be in the presence of someone who's passionate about what they do, and even
Yes.
if they're singularly focused on that one thing,
Yes.
we're astounded and we learn and we grow. And again, it's connection through food, drink, other people's company, the information, the words that we hear, the words that we speak, all help us grow. Alan,
Absolutely, Dean.
I'm curious about your outlook on 2021 and beyond. How do you see the Melbourne food scene growing even more? For example, I know that there's a lot of chefs and restaurateurs who are beginning to work together a lot more, so communicate. We've always had a small town for an industry,
Yeah,
but
that's
we're
true.
finding that these associations and connections with other like-minded individuals certainly can lead to further growth. What have you seen over the past year? And
I think what will what's coming more and more is sort of mini precincts.
mm,
So many, if you've been to Melbourne or you visit Melbourne, you know that Flinders Lane is a wonderful precinct of inner Melbourne with restaurants and so forth. Um, that's definitely sort of happened again at the top of Chinatown. So Little Bourke Street, it's no longer Asian restaurants. They are still there, but they've been joined by the likes of Bar Saracen doing modern Middle Eastern, Jerry Mai, who I mentioned before, with Anam, and Longrain is right on that corner as well of
yes.
Punch Lane, and so I think those precincts are realizing that with the change in outdoor dining that Melbourne has seen, that with good structure around that, of protection potentially from the
Mm.
occasional sprinkle of rain that
The
Melbourne gets, or the
occasional sprinkle.
occasional
Hang on,
uh,
that's one gone now.
yeah, that there are ways to create really good outdoor dining spaces that are well protected from the weather to be used for most of the time. And those precincts will work together really, really well. The top of Spring Street is another awesome section with great outdoor dining already. They're improved that and grown that massively because they've got the European restaurant there and the City Wine Store and Siglo Rooftop Bar just up above, and the Windsor Hotel just along.
And
So
the beginning of the theatre district as well.
yeah, very much so. It's a very vibrant part of town. So I think that's what I'm seeing, and I think um, certainly COVID will leave us with some venues that do not survive, which is
mm,
a terrible thing. Of course it is.
mm,
But I think taking that longer approach, if there's a venue, a restaurant that just didn't survive that whole period, I don't think it'll be empty for long, because younger people coming up in the industry will get a little bit of money behind them, as has always been the way, and they will find just enough to get in there and open something new and exciting and fresh. We will have a vibrancy again around certain areas. So they will not be blacked out windows for
no,
long.
no,
I
no,
guarantee
not
it.
for long, not for long.
Not at all.
I mean, as a true blue Melburnian, that restaurant scene is part of our DNA.
Yes. And I think, through the whole COVID period, Melburnians have really missed doing that. They've been able to do it potentially in their local neighborhoods, and that's great. And there are some phenomenal restaurants around Melbourne, but you come into the heart of the CBD and you've got 150, to choose
a short
from.
stroll.
Oh yeah, around. It's like, wow, yeah. Our neighborhoods are great. My neighborhood's great. I've got great Thai. I got a pizza. Got a hamburger place. Coffee. It's all there, but it's not that level of. It's not pure South. It's not super normal. It's not Pastuso or Annam or San Telmo or any of. It's not that. It's different. And then when you come into town, I think Melburnians are craving. You come in and you spend a night or two in the city, and you're on holidays in your own town.
Yeah, exactly. And seeing something new that you've never witnessed before. It's some of my greatest joys are just simply walking in the streets, and the architecture itself is remarkable. And you can spend time just simply pondering and finding open spaces. One end of Collins Street is completely different from the other end of Collins Street, and both ways.
True. Yeah. Look, even I go and stay in the city myself, and I'm in the city a lot with work and events and tours, etc. But when you stay, there's something quite special about stepping out of your hotel in the morning and you're finding somewhere for breakfast and just enjoying this beautiful, beautiful city. It'll soon be filled with tourists again. So Melburnians,
absolutely.
Make the most of it right now.
Make the most. It's all ours. It's all ours.
It won't last.
Well, my favourite time of day in Melbourne is that early morning. It's so many times, even as early as as late as last year, you'd walk around early morning Melbourne, and it's a city that's waking up. It's always, there's always action happening. There's always something going on. And certainly there's 24-hour and late night venues and all that kind of stuff. But that early morning really brings it home for me. It really impacts my love for the city.
Yes.
What's your favorite time of day in Melbourne?
Probably around that finish work time. So say 5-ish, 5:30, I really like. I do have a lot of early mornings in the city, but say 5:30, perhaps we're running an evening event. So what we would be doing, say we're going to do one of our nighttime tours in Melbourne, that means you're going to visit 2 cocktail bars and then go for a beautiful dinner, or just 3 bars in a row, something like that. So around 5, we're popping in to see everyone and just say hi, yeah, all booked in. Yeah, what are we having? Oh, we're having the Corpse Reviver cocktail. Yeah, awesome. See you guys at.
We need a few of those.
Yeah, we do. Or the Manhattan, or they're doing their own version of Negroni, or whatever it happens to be. So I love that time because the sort of the city retail is finishing, but not all the hospitality businesses. They've done lunch, some of them, but the bars are opening, and I love that period in the city. I really do. I remember
it's almost a different city at different times of day.
Yeah, 100%. I remember having a journalist from Sydney who she was British. Her husband was from Melbourne, but they lived in Sydney. And she got to Melbourne as often as she could, and I took her out. It was about 5 o'clock, and we were out till about 7:38. And I just about persuaded her to move to Melbourne. It was such a good time.
It's an easy sell. It's an easy sell.
She just loved it because we've got the European influence, we've got obviously influence from Asia, and it all melds together to make something quite special and unique, I think, for our city.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Well, Allan, I guess like part of the talks that we're holding here at Fed Square is based around sustainability. So what advice would you give to a young restaurateur or young chef who's just beginning in the industry to make their business or to help their business be a lot more sustainable?
I think sustainability is much easier to achieve now than 15 years ago and so forth. I know, for instance, I happened to go to Vue de Monde not say 12 months ago, and the team there were telling me that their oyster shells are taken away, and there is a reef being built just off the St Kilda Marina. I think it's only about just a couple of 100 meters out. So it's a department, it's a Victorian government department who are doing it. So these oyster shells are, obviously oysters are shucked in the restaurant, shells taken away, and rebuilding a natural habitat, which is just a phenomenal thing. Now that's a story that's so wonderful. It's always about storytelling. And I think if sustainability is one of your pillars of who you are and what you do, you end up with some great stories that really resonate with people. They're not just stories that you come and go. They do resonate, they stick, and you remember. And I've never forgotten just hearing about that. If you can, have connections with farmers and growers and producers, that's what so many restaurants do. And it could be brewing a beer for you. It could be, growing beautiful wild fennel that you get to use, through the late spring on a particular dish. Like people like Rosa Mitchell, she has some Sicilian heritage and a number of relatives who are produce growers around Werribee and so forth. So you can imagine, when Rosa says, I'm only getting the artichokes in the spring because that's when they're best, and I won't sell them any other time.
That's right.
And you are going to get the best Sicilian style artichokes, and when they're done, they're done. That's it. Till next year.
Yeah, that's right. And it's an age-old thing. I mean, today we're presented with so many choices of food that have been preserved or treated in some way. Fresh is best. It's a good old slogan, but it's when you have that direct connection to the people who are growing, and you understand their role and the role of yourself as a guardian or a custodian of food and of land. Incredible. But I love that story that she does stick to the seasons, and so it's the way that we've always eaten.
And I think for chefs, those conversations with producers, you never know where it's going to lead to. I know, for example, Jerry Mai has Anam restaurant, and she also has some what's called Pho Nom, which are beautiful Vietnamese noodle places for going and having pho and so forth. But her seafood supplier, she would be buying carcasses and bones and poultry and etc. And one day she was with him, and he had like a little chicken rib, what she calls, which he would sort of flatten out. And she goes, "Oh, what are they?" He goes, "Oh, we call them chicken ribs. It's got a relatively kind of soft bone in the middle, but they're a great little cut, a little bit of skin, some meat still. Yeah, they're fantastic." He goes, "Oh, I'll take some of those." Well, now he cannot keep up with the supply of chicken ribs because she's put them on the menu, called them chicken ribs. They've got some beautiful spicing on the outside. They're flash fried and they're absolutely delicious. So you never know what comes from those conversations, collaborations, and so forth. So
and that's right. I mean, those chicken ribs. You go into your suburban butchers and sorry, we're all sold out today. If you come a lot earlier.
I know. It's like Flathead from 20 years ago. You can get Flathead anywhere, and now you can't get it. No, you can.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I mean, I remember as a kid, the Flathead was always it was the daggy fish, and something that growing up, it would be our Friday night fish, just crumbed or deep fried or something like that. And you'd always be catching them from Mornington or off Geelong. Now you're paying $30+ per kilo, and
you sure are.
Yeah, they do taste a lot sweeter.
Oh, it's amazing fish. I do love flat. Always have.
Yeah. Here's a question for you. If you were to think about Melbourne as a flavour, what flavour would you consider it to be?
Ooh. Well, I guess for me, it would be if you could put eucalyptus in food of sorts, just a hint. I think the gums and the eucalypt around Melbourne always remind me of Melbourne. And I remember when I landed back in Melbourne as a 17-year-old, we were coming back along the Tullamarine Freeway back from the airport, and I could smell eucalyptus outside. And I went, oh my God, I'm home. And I grew up near the Dandenongs, at the bottom of the Dandenongs as a kid. And so, I mean, walking around Melbourne at different times, you smell different gums. There's peppermint gum and and so on and so forth. So that's probably what it would be. I think some sort of a
Yeah.
leaf used in a tea, or used to, like you can get the beautiful pepperberry and the mountain pepper and use it to flavor cheeses, which they do down at Wilson's Prom. So I think maybe that tree, that's me for Melbourne. That's my
Yeah,
flavor.
there you go. I mean, that is an unusual ingredient, and
Yeah.
I totally agree. I remember having visitors from Scotland, and they were like, we thought the place would smell like gum leaves, and I said, oh yeah, well, just wait for it to rain.
Yeah, that's right.
Any minute now.
Yeah, and the Melbourne, in the summer when you hit 40 degrees for 2-3 days in a row, and then the rain, as all, it does come through. We always get that cool change, and it drops, 20 degrees in 15 minutes or something like that, and the rain and the smell, and it's just fantastic. That's me. That's my Melbourne.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, we'll finish up on that, Alan, but thank you so much for being you. I keep on going with this phrase in my mind of Allan Campion's the champion of the Melbourne food scene.
Oh,
And I'm sure many people said, Alan, you're such a champion. It just runs in like that. But to hear you talk about the Melbourne food scene and the potential, what it can become, what it is now, and what it has been
yes.
historically is an incredible thing. And your voice needs to be heard even more so, and your wealth of experience now that you're offering it out to people. Of course, we'll put all the links so you can find out a little bit more. But don't stop what you're doing, Alan. It's people like yourself who are keeping our food scene alive and vibrant, and connecting the dots, most important.
That's it. I mean, I'm not the worker. I'm not the chef in the kitchen. I'm not the grower. But they're the people that I know and love and have connection with, and I can introduce food lovers to those people and those businesses, and join the dots for them, and make their experience of Melbourne all the better. That's what we're here for.
Absolutely. We've got such a beautiful city. It's a vibrant food and cafe scene. It's an art scene, an underground. There's all sorts of groups happening. Our sports scene is a major religion for us, but it's those that have that connection to our food and our community that seem to be thriving in these times.
Absolutely. Terrific.
Well,
Great to talk.
Thank you so much, Alan.
No worries. Chat again. Bye-bye. See ya.
Take care.